Okay, digging into paid social training, there are lots of different names for this. Some people will call it paid social, some people will call it social media marketing. The main thing to remember here is that this is different from what we would often call organic social media posts. An organic social media post is a post that goes to your page. You post on LinkedIn, you post on Facebook, it's free, they're not charging you anything. You may have seen in the social media management training that the reach of any organic or free social media post is limited. It's throttled by the platforms to, on average, around 3%. So you don't really get much of a return. You don't get much reach for your efforts on social media. These are pay to play platforms. That's how their businesses work. They want to make money, and so they want you to pay for advertisements. So that is our paid social marketing on Facebook or TikTok or LinkedIn or X, basically any channel that we're paying to advertise on. And when we think about these channels, they are distinct from pay-per-click or PPC. PPC is sometimes referred to as SEM, search engine marketing. So it gets a little confusing because we have SEM, which is PPC, search engine, or we have SMM, which is social media marketing or paid social. A little confusing. The main difference is that one is really focused for the most part on top and mid funnel. So your paid social channels are more top and mid funnel, which we'll talk about. And your PPC is more bottom of funnel, which is your final decision making process. So we'll start with a fun video from Family Guy if you're familiar with this particular show.
Lois, it's back!
I heard, Peter. I heard.
Kids, it's happening. Get your coats. This is what we practiced for.
Yeah! I love you, Dad.
I love you too, sweetheart. None of the past matters.
I love that particular clip just because it's such a perfect illustration of how many people seem to think that marketing is supposed to work. Now, when we watch that, we think it's ridiculous. Like, of course, no one sees a billboard ad, stops the car, goes and picks up their family, and then goes and purchases the thing that they saw in the ad, right? We know that's not how marketing works. It sounds nonsensical to us. Yet suddenly you end up in a boardroom or you end up in an executive discussion with the rest of your team, and you are asking, well, how many sales did we get from those marketing efforts? How much did that billboard bring in? What were the Facebook campaigns doing? Was our TV efficacious? Of course, these are important questions we absolutely have to understand, is our marketing working or not? But we have to make sure that we're evaluating the right metrics and thinking about the right strategy. So as I mentioned in the beginning, Facebook, TikTok, X, LinkedIn, whatever, these are top and mid funnel channels for the most part, especially in healthcare. Remember, we can't do retargeting. If you can do retargeting, you can do direct response funnels. That's not really an option for most of the ways that you can set up a paid social campaign. So we are focused on top of funnel, which is awareness. What are we trying to do with these campaigns? If nobody knows what a McRib is, then they're obviously not going to go and order one or even think about ordering one. If no one has ever heard of you, how can they possibly go and seek out your services? They can't, right? So the first step in any marketing efforts is awareness. That's our number one step, or what would be considered the top of the funnel. To put this a different way, think about your boots on the ground outreach, whatever you call them, outreach coordinators, business development reps, community liaisons, right? I've heard a million different names for this role, but they're people that go out into the community and try to build relationships and referrals. Imagine that this person went and they rented out an office downtown, put a sign out front, and just sat there and waited for people to come to them asking about referrals. Sounds ridiculous, right? We would never want to do that. Instead, we have these people go into the community and actively build relationships so that we can ultimately drive referrals. Because if no one knows who we are, then they're not going to refer to us. So we need to be thinking about our multi-channel marketing strategy in the same way as we think of our boots on the ground outreach. We're not just going to park a sign downtown and wait there for someone to ask us about referrals. And that's really what we're doing when we look at PPC campaigns or SEO campaigns. Google is doing a little bit more for us. So the analogy would be a little bit better if we had an organization like Google that took all the healthcare providers and said, hey, drive down this street, right? Or took all the potential patients and said, hey, drive down this street where you might see the sign that our BD rep put up. So that's what Google's doing, is it's filtering the traffic coming in. And then we're putting our sign up, we're putting our advertisement up in front of that filtered traffic that Google's provided for us. So PPC and SEO strategies are more effective than just putting a sign in a lawn downtown with the BD rep, but we're still just waiting around. It's not an overly active strategy. We're putting a sign up and we're saying, oh, I hope that someone searches for the thing that I'm advertising today. And if they search, then Google's going to show us in that search, or our organic rankings are going to show in a regular search that's not an advertisement, which gives us the opportunity to communicate with that particular patient, family member, referral partner, whatever, and have them click our website, call us, whatever the case may be. Paid social is not working that way for the most part. Paid social is driving that awareness piece first. So it's like our BD rep going and knocking on the door and talking to the discharge nurse at the hospital, or talking to the therapist, or talking to the PCP, whoever the referral sources are. They have to go out, they have to make that communication. Our paid social is the same. We're making that communication with our B2B or B2C campaigns. Then a second piece is it enough for your business development, your outreach person, to just say hi? Are you going to walk up and say, oh, hi, my name's Jonathan and I represent so-and-so treatment provider, or I represent so-and-so therapy service, or I represent so-and-so dental clinic. See you later. That's also a terrible idea, because you have lots of competition. These people are being hit up by innumerable reps from different service providers. So if I've got 5 different dental clinics I could refer to, I've got 5 different MRI scan facilities, I've got 5 different urgent cares, whatever the situation is, you have competitors in your marketplace. So it's not enough to just be aware. I now have to build interest in, build trust with, and get them to consider us as the provider of choice or the right fit for themselves, for referrals, whatever the case may be. So paid social is driving awareness, and then it also has a strong educational and informational component where we are trying to get them to consider us and become part of the decision-making set. So grab attention, and you should be looking at that in your ads. We'll cover that in a different part of this training where we talk about what makes a good ad and how we get attention with our ads. We have to differentiate. Why are they going to consider us? We can't be presenting ourselves as a commodity. We can't just say, well, we're a dentist office like every other office, or we provide bariatric surgery just like everyone else. Like, that's a terrible value proposition. No one's going to be overly encouraged to choose you if you are a commodity. So we have to differentiate ourselves. How do we differentiate? We educate and inform. What is different about us? What do we do better? And how do we make sure we're communicating that accurately to potential patients, families, referral partners, etc. So again, just like your BD rep in person is working to drive awareness and differentiation, your paid social strategy has to be doing the same thing. And it's an important part of your marketing mix. It's great that PPC delivers people in the final decision-making part of their journey, but there are only so many people searching in PPC in a given day. And again, as we've talked about, if you're not advertising at this stage, in the awareness consideration stage, someone else is. Your competitors certainly are. And so if your competitors do a good job of advertising on these channels, then they're not going to Google and searching for services because they already know where to go. So you're losing patients in a market that you're not even playing in because you have competitors that are advertising in spaces before someone gets to the final decision-making phase where they might use Google as a search engine to find those particular services. Differentiation is also really about building trust. On a very simple, very simplistic level, frequency builds trust. We trust things and we trust people, we trust organizations that we are more familiar with. And so just the fact that I start to see advertisements from a particular provider again and again builds a little bit more trust than someone I've never heard of. And so you can think about it, whether you're buying a car, whether you're trying out or going to a coffee shop in a new town, whether you're thinking about going out for a bite to eat in a new town, you are much more likely to be interested in going to somewhere that you trust and know in terms of their reputation and the services they deliver, the product quality that they have, versus trying something brand new. And again, there is that relationship between price or risk and cost. I'm a little bit more willing to try a new restaurant because it's cheap, right? I'm more willing to try a fast food restaurant, a new one, than a new steakhouse, which is expensive. Now, I'm much less willing to try a new car company that I've never heard of. So we have to build trust. And part of marketing at the top and the mid funnel is really about building that trust with consumers, with referral partners. Everyone always asks, where should we be? Strategically, it's a really important question. We've got Facebook, we've got TikTok, we've got X, we've got LinkedIn. Which one of these channels should we be choosing? And the answer is pretty simple. Just be where your audience is. Where are people going for their social media needs in terms of patients that use your services? So very simple analysis, like almost anyone over 30 is on Facebook. That's a great place to be for older audiences. If we're looking for younger audiences, then we're going to want to start with TikTok or Snapchat. Where are more women likely to be? A lot more women tend to be on Pinterest than other channels. But then again, Pinterest is really very visual. People go there for specific reasons. They'll go there for travel. They'll go there for design ideas. So it's not just the demographic, but it's also the mentality of the people using the platform that we want to think about. So as we think about our target audience, again, if they're trending older, let's definitely be on Facebook. If they're trending younger, let's definitely check out TikTok or Snapchat. And then it's a budget question after that. So we want to maximize the place where our audience is most likely to be. And so it's better to spend money on a channel where our audience is matching in terms of demographics and interests or needs, and max out that channel. So again, there's only a limited number of people in our service area. And so we're only going to spend so much money. And then once we kind of max it out, which we'll talk about how to figure out that budgeting, then we can expand to the next channel. There's no real need to have small budgets on every single channel. That's not overly helpful. It's usually better to max out a channel where you know audiences and then expand to other channels as you have more budget, as you grow as an organization and have more volume needs, whatever the case may be. A comment here on long form versus short form content, because it comes up a lot, at least in my world. So obviously we send a lot of our content for client review. And when we do advertisements, we'll often get a question and say, well, this seems really long, right? The written copy seems long, or maybe the video that we're doing seems long. Long form content, by and large, most of the time is going to work significantly better than short form content. And so that always causes a point of confusion. People ask, well, I always see short ads, right? We've got a 15-second jingle. We've got a slogan. We've got a logo. We got a slogan. We got a logo. Usually I see a 2-sentence ad, right? Why is that the case? It's really because of marketing cost. So marketing as an industry, as a field, has developed to give the greatest bang for the buck, as we're all trying to do. We're trying to optimize our capital allocation. And TV is really expensive. Newspapers were really expensive. And so a full page newspaper ad is significantly more expensive than a small little 2-sentence classified. Same thing with a television commercial. I'm going to pay a lot more for a full minute of TV than I would pay for a 15-second advertisement. So because of the expense on these platforms, marketing has trended towards shorter, punchier content. Now, with that said, if you look at the data, long form always works better. You can just do a simple internet search. You can find long form versus short term content. You'll see tons and tons of case studies how long form significantly outperform short term again and again. Now, why is this important to bring up here? Because with a lot of digital media, you can charge the same. That's one of the nice things about digital. If I run a TV ad, they're going to charge me a lot more for a 30-second spot they're going to charge me a lot more for a minute spot than they were at a 30-second spot. YouTube doesn't care. YouTube, you can run a 15-second video, you can run a 2-hour commercial, and they will charge you the same. They don't really care about the size of the content. Facebook is the same. So Facebook, you can have a 2-sentence ad, or you can have a 2-paragraph ad, or a 2-page ad. And Facebook is going to charge you the same for those ads. They're just really charging you at the rate of views, how many people viewed it, not how long the video was or how long the content was. So for this reason, you want to explore a lot more long form content because it's going to be a lot more effective most of the time. Budgeting, again, real simple here. So when we think about budgeting, when you go into the back end of all these platforms, one of the nice things about them is they will tell you about the total audience size. So they'll say, okay, look, I'm choosing women age 30 to 60 in the Nashville area. And Facebook and TikTok and X will all kick back the amount of people that you can potentially reach on their platform who are regular users. So we want to take that total audience size, whatever it is that it gives us, and then we want to divide that by 1,000. Why are we dividing by 1,000? That's because your cost is calculated per 1,000 views. So your CPM is cost per 1,000 views. And so whatever that CPM is often like $10 on Facebook or X or TikTok. It's really, really cheap. We're going to multiply the cost times the audience divided by 1,000 to get an easy number. Then we finally have to multiply it by the frequency. So this is important. Think about it. We look at that McRib advertisement. I mean, did anyone ever go buy McRib because they saw one advertisement? Probably not. How do you make your purchase decisions? I go back to my example of buying a new car. I saw multiple ads. I saw TV ads. I saw online ads. I did online search reviews. I talked to friends. I talked to dealerships, right? I went to review sites. And so I had all these touch points for me to start making my car purchase decision. Most advertising works this way. So if you look at the data, anywhere from 7 to 12 touches is pretty normal for people to just really start to think about making a decision or take the action that you're trying to get them to take. For that reason, we want them to see it multiple times. We want them to see it 7 to 12 times. And now again, are we going to show them 7 to 12 views in a single day? No, it gets annoying. That's actually, you probably have a negative feeling from the person that we're trying to reach. So we're going to spread that out over time. So I think about my audience size. I think of how often I want to reach them. And if it's a new campaign, you're generally looking for like 3 to 4 times a week would be a really good starting metric. It gets you in front of the people enough times, but it doesn't overwhelm or annoy them. And so 3 to 4 a week, audience size times CPM cost is your budget. So again, are you always going to have a big enough budget to reach everyone as often as you'd like? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on the size of your organization. If you don't have enough budget to reach your entire target audience with the frequency that you're looking for, then the best option there is to narrow that audience. Maybe you realize that women are more likely to utilize your services than men. So you're going to cut all the men out of the audience size and bring that audience size down, which might make it more reasonable. Or you do age, or you do interest-based targeting, or maybe you limit the radius that you're trying to reach and say, okay, well, why don't we just focus around 5 miles of our locations rather than 10 or 20? Whatever you can do to limit the audience size to get it to a budget that works for you. On that note, your budget should be comfortable. The worst thing that you can do is to be dependent on your marketing budget for immediate return. As we just talked about, nobody makes a purchase decision like we saw in the McRib video. It takes time. It takes usually multiple exposures, and we have to build trust with people. Often there's a sequence of messaging. We're not just running the same ad. If you're doing really good digital, you've got some awareness campaigns, you've got some educational campaigns, you've got some trust building campaigns. Over time, you're showing them these different advertisements to help them move through that nurture sequence or that decision-making process. And so for that reason, you don't want a budget where you're biting your nails and worried about cash flow every day. So a really good budget for like most commercial providers is usually around like 7%. of total revenue will often go to marketing. If you're just a pure Medicaid provider, that's often going to be somewhere between 1% and 3%. You just have a lot lower margin with Medicaid, and so you have smaller percentages of revenue that you're going to use for marketing. For those that are in the cash pay or the private pay only space, you'll often see marketing budgets as much as 20% of total revenue. But again, there's so much cash flow in terms of income coming in that usually you're still making a pretty good return, even if you have a high percent of your budget going to marketing. Also, with cash pay, it just costs more to reach those people. You have to pay more to reach them. It takes longer to build trust with the cash pay market or a private pay market. And so your marketing expenses just always could be significantly higher than if you were within the commercial space or especially the Medicaid space. So set a comfortable spend. If $2,000 a month is comfortable for you, then set it at $2,000 a month. You just don't want to be obsessing or worrying about overspending from a cash flow standpoint. We don't want to look for that immediate return. We're really looking for 3 to 6 month windows in terms of how we think about results within a paid social top of funnel, mid funnel strategy. So that brings us to the data. What are we looking for? How do we understand success for a paid social campaign? If it's not direct admissions, if it's not qualified call volume, then what are we looking at? So first and foremost, we're actually looking at the CPM. How much are we paying to reach 1,000 people? And that's important. At the end of the day, if I've got my targeting narrowed in, because these platforms allow amazing targeting capabilities from interest to demographics to location, I know I'm dialed into the right people. So what do I pay, or what's the cheapest rate I can pay to reach those people? The CPM. So a very, very important metric. We do actually want to understand what we're paying for impressions. Obviously, you can't take impressions to the bank, so we'll talk about that in a second, but that's your starting point for your KPI. Then it's engagement, interaction, click-all rate. So different platforms have different names for these things, but at the end of the day, if people are engaging with their ad, that's a good sign. It shows us that we're grabbing their attention and then something's appealing about it. And so if we look at it, some kind of interaction rate, that's a good metric to be understanding. Click-through rate is really similar. So it depends on the type of campaign we're running. For all of these platforms, we can choose to run an awareness campaign. We can choose to run a click or a traffic campaign. We can choose to run a lead form campaign. All of them have different costs to them. So again, based on what you're trying to get people to do, you're going to pay more from a CPM standpoint. So that's something to consider. But if we really want people to get to the website, then our click-through rate is going to be an important metric for us, as well as ultimately the cost per click. Though again, as we talked about in some of our other videos, the cost per click is determined by your CPM. So it's just really the total marketing spend divided by clicks. So CPM should be a more important metric in terms of evaluating overall cost. Then we got that frequency component like we talked about. We don't want frequency to be too high because that'll annoy people. We don't want it to be too low because that's not going to get stuck in people's minds soon enough. It's not going to help nurture them through a decision-making cycle. Then what we really want at the end of the day is qualified inquiry lift. So again, we're not looking at new patients. We're not looking at admissions, right? These in marketing in general, that's the job of the call team, the admissions team, whoever that person is. We're not going to see admissions from the marketing efforts. The admissions are marketing sending all the at-bats and giving the swings to the admissions team to bring the patient in. So lift is looking at our aggregate growth in qualified inquiries and new patients or admissions. We can't track it specifically. Again, it's not PPC, it's not SEO. We can't see a click, a call, an admission. These are people that need multiple journey touch points. They saw a television ad, they saw a TV ad, they saw a television ad, they saw a Facebook ad, then they saw an X ad, then they asked a friend about us, and then they did an online search, looked at the Google reviews, finally went to the website and called. Right? There's no way to track that journey. It's not possible. A lot of people are searching for kind of this holy grail of somehow being able to track every single action that someone takes across the web. You can't. There's too many privacy blockers. There's too many ad blockers. In healthcare, we can't cookie tag people because of privacy and HIPAA concerns. So there's no way to get a full journey perspective. And even if you could never really assign a realistic number to that. It's not quantitative enough. what percent did the Facebook ad versus the television ad versus the conversation with the friend versus looking at the online reviews contribute to that person's final decision? Ultimately, who cares? As long as it did contribute, that's what we want. So we're going to look at overall qualified lift. And then obviously assuming a standard conversion rate from the team, that should be translating to a certain percentage of new patients or new admissions in a given month. So if we've got, let's make it simple, we got 100 patients that come into our facility, our program, our services in a given month, over 3 to 6 months of new paid social spends, we should be seeing an uptick in that. We should be seeing 110 patients a month or 130 patients a month. There should be some kind of growth in the qualified inquiries that's translating to new patients or admissions. If we're not seeing that old aggregate growth, then we know that something's wrong. We know that something's not working. Now, again, does that mean that the channel doesn't work? If your audience isn't there, yeah, it's a bad channel. But if your audience is there, then something's wrong with your targeting, something's wrong with your timing, something's wrong with your messaging. It's not a channel problem, it's a you problem. You're doing something wrong on that channel where it's not being effective. So you should be expecting results, but you're gonna have to look over a longer time period, and you're never gonna be able to pick apart what percent was Facebook versus X versus television, whatever. You're just gonna look at that aggregate lift. Again, no cost per inquiry, no customer acquisition cost. That's not how we're understanding these channels. All of these platforms have wonderful amounts of data. Again, that can be a good thing and a bad thing. We can obsess over it too much. We can get too granular with it. We can agonize over the day-to-day data, which is really meaningless. Nothing changes day to day. You want to look at this stuff in an aggregate. At least once a month would be a good amount to look at it. But really for paid social, we recommend once a quarter. Once a month is usually for people that are a little bit more nervous about where their marketing spend is going. They're having an unrealistic expectation on returns. And so they want a monthly update on paid social results. Really, you need to look at least a quarterly basis because that's a more realistic timeline for paid social. Again, nobody watches an ad and immediately takes an action. Nobody usually even sees 3 or 4 ads and immediately takes an action. We are expecting this to work over time through building up community mindshare, through building up referrals, through nurturing people through a decision-making cycle, et cetera, et cetera. What data can we see? Tons of stuff. We can see video views. We can see what percentage of a video is viewed. We can see the number of people clicking, how much we're paying for a click, what percentage of people are interacting with the ad versus actually clicking through to the website. We can see the lead form costs, which is something that we'll talk about on the next slide here. So you can see that there's a lot of different data that's available. One of the things that you'll notice standing out is one here, the CPM cost. So for this particular client, over $250,000 in spend, only a $4 CPM cost. So for every 1,000 people we're reaching, we're only paying $4. That's very, very cost effective. Significantly cheaper than TV or even often radio. So it's one advantage to these digital platforms is usually the cost that you're paying. Another thing you'll notice here is that the click-through rate is what most people would think, unless they're marketing professionals, is really low. So it's under 1%. You have different kind of campaign objectives you can run. We'll talk about in a second. You can run awareness, traffic, lead forms, etc. A traffic campaign is you telling the algorithm that you want to target people who are more likely to click. And all of the platforms know this, X, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. They know who likes to click, they know who likes to watch videos, and they know who's more likely to fill out a lead form. And so you can tell these platforms to target those people, but they charge you more for it. So they're going to actually make you pay more for the targeting options of what you might consider a higher value interaction. And so in a traffic campaign where you're trying to get people to the website to view something, 1% is good. For an awareness campaign where you're not targeting people that are more likely to click, you might see a click-through rate of like 0.1%. It'd be really, really small. But they're charging you a lot less for the awareness campaigns. So you're always doing this cost-benefit analysis of like, what are we trying to get from people? And then what are we paying to reach those people? So if I can run an awareness campaign at a 0.1% click-through rate, but still get a cheaper overall cost per click, then that's great, right? Because I'm paying less from a CPM standpoint. I'm still getting the clicks I want. I'm actually paying less for them, even though a higher percentage of people are not clicking. Versus if I run a traffic campaign that I pay more for, I might end up paying a higher cost per click because I'm getting charged more on a CPM basis. Now, the other thing that we need to think about in all of this is, again, 99% of the people that view an ad are not taking action. So in one sense, there's some value here in terms of the people that do engage, that do click, we know are more interested in our services or what we're offering. And so it's helped giving us some directional data that there's clearly value to what we're providing. There's people out there that want it, need it, or at least are looking to learn more. So that's a good data point. But then again, 99% of people aren't engaging. Now, does that mean that they're not our potential customers? They're not our potential patients? Absolutely not. Again, how many people see an ad and see the make a write-up ad and take immediate action? How many people see it 3 times and take action? Not too many. How many people that are seeing an ad don't need our services today, but might need them tomorrow or next week or next year? The entire purpose of paid social is to build awareness and consideration before they're at the point where they're making a decision. Because again, we want to grow market share. We want to make sure that the community knows who we are so that when they have the solution, the need, the desire for our services, they're thinking of us. And they're skipping Google. They're not thinking of a competitor. They're thinking about going to us. That builds cumulative advantage for us as an organization. Now, of course, an important point here then is your ad creative, your marketing campaigns should be designed in such a way that the 99% of people that don't click are still remembering you, thinking about you, learning something from this, or you're becoming part of the awareness and decision set, part of the community mind share for these people that you're reaching. We don't want to just focus on the people that are taking action. That probably means they're a little bit closer to making a decision or have a higher need now, which is great. We want those people clicking. But we also want to make sure we're having a very positive impact from a marketing standpoint on the people that are not taking action today, because they're going to be our customer tomorrow, next week, or next year. Even if they're not, they might refer us. Right? They might not be someone that comes to use our services, but their family member might come to them and say, hey, do you know anyone that does such and such? And they'll say, oh yeah, you know what? I see these guys all the time. You should give them a call. They seem pretty good. So we have this divide between awareness versus traffic. Those are options on the back end. We also have lead forms. And so almost every platform offers this. It's something that, again, executives can get too obsessed about. And so why is that? Because again, it provides a clearer ROI, let's say. If someone fills out a lead form, well, now I've got their name, now I've got their contact information. And in our minds, that's a qualified inquiry, right? And it is, that's valid. It is a qualified inquiry. And so we feel that we can start to attach an ROI to the campaigns if we're getting the lead forms versus traffic versus just impressions with awareness. You know, we can't take impressions or likes to the bank, we say. Sort of true, right? Obviously, that's accurate. But if we go back and look at like our Kellogg's case study, if you've seen that one yet, you'll see that there's very strong reasons that you absolutely do not want to overly focus on direct response ROI, because you'll lose market share and you'll lose against competitors. We have to be getting to people earlier in the decision-making stages, especially as we get bigger. The more volume we need, the more channels we have to be on, and the earlier we have to be touching base with people to build a reputation in a particular community. So lead forms allow us this ability to get a clear ROI, and we'll pay more for them. But why I don't personally recommend them, and we often steer clients away from them, is because we're losing a lot of volume. Now, think about how a lead form works. Someone has to click the ad, and then they go to what is considered gate-locked content. So usually the way we'll set up a lead form is they get something for giving us the information. They get a white paper, they get a video, they get something of value. They clicked on that ad because they wanted the thing that we were offering on behalf of our clients. Clearly, there's a problem or desire that they want to solve that they think that this is going to help them solve it. So they want access to it. And we say, okay, wait, we see that you want access, but we're not going to give you access unless you give us your name, your email, and maybe your phone number, right? Well, what percentage of people do that? And on average, based on all of the data that we have, it's about 10%. So 9 out of 10 people who are basically telling us they want the thing we're offering are not being able to view the thing that we're offering. They're not getting it. So one, that provides a little bit of frustration. Like, now I'm just annoyed. It's like, oh, well, I clicked your ad and now you're not giving me the thing that I thought I was getting. But two, they're not having the experience of actually consuming the content. And the whole point of them consuming the content is not to get their name and number. Now, that's a mistake. That's where a lot of organizations go wrong. It's like, oh, well, the only reason we created the white paper was so that people would, fill out these lead forms. Absolutely the wrong way to think about it. How you need to be thinking about it is the white paper really positions you as the provider of the solution that they're looking for. How are you showing that you're really good at what you do and building trust, or that you offer just the right solution for these particular people? If they read the content, if they watch the content, whatever, they'll get that. And then when they need the service, which they seem to be indicating that they do, that's why they clicked in the first place, they're going to choose us. Versus if they've never viewed the content because they didn't want to give their name and their number or whatever, then we're losing them as a potential patient, as a potential customer. So the question becomes, would I rather have 10 out of 10 people view that content, or would I rather only have 1 out of 10 people view that content and get their name and number instead? There is obviously an ROI analysis to run there. Maybe your team is just amazing at converting that 1 out of 10. So for you, it's worth it. I can tell you from experience, it's usually not the case. I would much rather have the 10 out of 10 people view the content, and then you leave it up to them calling on their own. Instead of you hounding them and following up with them and you getting your clear ROI picture, you're looking for that ultimate metric that we just talked about, lift. Are we getting qualified inquiry lift? And if we're doing marketing right, we absolutely will. Important to think about in paid social is business to business and business to consumer. For whatever reason, for most healthcare providers, they often think of paid social in only terms of business to consumer. And this is usually the wrong way to think about it. So if you look at a lot of different healthcare provider types, a smaller percentage of patients are coming from direct to consumer or business to consumer than it is from business to business. Now, this isn't always the case. There's obviously like dentists, for example, are almost all business to consumer. But for many healthcare providers, the main line of their patient volume is coming from referrals from other providers in the community that don't offer the services that they offer. So hospitals are a big referral partner for a lot of different kinds of healthcare providers, as an example. So if you've got 70% of your new patient admissions coming from business to business referrals, why would you not be marketing on the channels that would influence your biggest volume of patients? What's going to move the needle more, business to business or business to consumer? And for a lot of different provider types, business to business is going to move the needle more. So what does that mean? That means that you should be on LinkedIn, or you should be on ZocDoc, or you should be using WebMD. Any of these options that are giving you exposure to other healthcare professionals that can become referral sources for you. For a lot of our clients, when we engage in B2B marketing, often on LinkedIn for the first time, they'll see anywhere from a 10 to a 20% increase in referral volume just with the same BD team or outreach team that they'd had before. Why does that happen? Well, because your outreach team is very manual, right? They're literally getting in a car, driving, walking into a place and talking to people face to face. How many people can they talk to per day doing that? I mean, usually only a couple. So I'm paying that person $30 an hour, let's say, to talk to one person an hour. Whereas we can go on Facebook and pay $4 to talk to 1,000 people, right? Or LinkedIn's more expensive. They're offering to charge like $30 to $60 CPMs, but still $60 to reach 1,000 people. Very advantageous. And so when we look at it from a cost standpoint, it's valuable. And then because we're reaching more people, it's easier for the outreach team to get in the door. So maybe they're talking to a new referral source. That referral source hadn't heard of you before, but they've been seeing you on LinkedIn for the past 2 months. They're like, oh yeah, I know who your organization is. Yeah, I'll be happy to talk to you. I'm familiar kind of with what you do, but need to learn more. Great. Gets me in the door where they might not have been able to get in before. The other way that it works is it just helps them stay top of mind. There's a lot of healthcare referrals that are actually just, whoever they think of first, unfortunately. And so if your outreach rep only sees them once a month because they're talking to all these other people the rest of the month, then your LinkedIn ads are helping you stay top of mind for a very cost-effective CPM until next month when your outreach rep can see them again. So really make sure you're thinking about your business-to-business paid social strategy. It's often a really critical but very often missed component of paid social. How do we optimize the algorithm when we think about these? Again, it just goes back to quality. So what is happening in terms of the people that we are trying to reach? Do our ads connect with them? All of the platforms are looking at scroll time and dwell time. So even if they don't click, the platform knows if they paused and kind of read the ad or not. All of that is valuable. And then something just to be aware of. It's not just bidding and ad quality. Of course, you can pay to get more, as always. All these platforms are happy to have you pay more if you're willing to increase your CPM or your desired cost per click or cost per lead form or whatever it is. These platforms are going to show your ad more and show your ad to your target people more. So there's value there. Right data is important. So there's two ways I want to talk about this. So first off is, again, you need a good ad, but for a good ad, part of it is grabbing attention. Does that mean that we want to have a cute cat video as our ad? Because that's going to get a lot of attention, right? But those aren't people looking at cute cat ads. It doesn't tell us anything about whether or not they are going to utilize our services or our products as a provider. And so we're not feeding the algorithm the right data. And so basically what happens is we're telling the algorithm to find other pet lovers or find other cat lovers. That's not who we want to get in front of. So because we fed the algorithm bad data, it's now optimizing in the wrong direction. So you always want to think about your messaging and your ad content, and that's your written copy as well as your illustrations. Does it attract the right audience? Because that's going to feed the algorithm. Now, another thing to think about with paid social is even 3-4 years ago, the machine learning on the back end of these platforms and their algorithms was not that great. You really needed a lot of human optimization in terms of your targeting strategies. Nowadays, the algorithms are really, really good. And so you've probably experienced this. Maybe you're on Facebook and you click an ad for something, and then suddenly you get 5 or 6 more ads for similar services or products. Or you visit a website and suddenly you get 5 or 6 ads for different providers providing that thing that you were looking for. The algorithms are really good at determining where you are, where you're searching for services or products, what kind of services or products you're searching for. So what that means is you don't have to narrow your targeting as much on the back end of the platforms as you used to. You can actually do really broad targeting, which is cheaper. So the broader you target, the cheaper you'll be charged from a CPM basis, and the algorithms will optimize for you. Also, it allows the algorithms, because the algorithms have a heck of a lot more data than you do most of the time, by leaving it broad, they're able to target people that might have been outside of the target set if you had been too narrow in your audience choices. So by letting the algorithm really understand who your target audience is and giving it more options, it actually tends to work better these days than a really strong human component. With all that said, you still need to do a lot of split testing. So hopefully you're familiar with split testing. Split testing is just a basic A/B test, right? We take image one has a blue background, image 2 has a red background, and we see which one gets more engagement, or which one gets longer video views, or which one gets more people to fill out the lead form, whatever the situation is. So obviously that's a really simple example. What we're doing is we're testing multiple images, we're testing multiple messages, we're testing multiple audiences, we're testing multiple landing pages, we're testing the elements of those landing pages, right? There's all this optimization that can be done to really understand what works or what doesn't work. And if you're working with a really good agency or team, they should know a lot of this already. So their amount of split testing that they have to perform is probably less. But still, you want to make sure you're verifying your assumptions. Should you really be targeting women? Should it be women ages 20 to 30 or ages 30 to 40? Should you be targeting people that have an interest in fashion? Yes or no? Or cosmetic surgery? Yes or no? Like, by running these split tests, you're able to determine who your audience is, what motivates your audience. Now, again, with that said, where people go wrong here is they often think like, oh, well, again, if I just get the right message, that this is somehow going to automatically make people buy my thing or come in and seek our services or whatever the situation is. That's wrong. You have to build trust. You have to build trust over time. And so it's not a magic combination of keywords and image that is suddenly going to drive your business forward. You need to be optimizing for those things because we want to be getting the best result for the spend that we have. But it's not a single image ad combination that's going to make or break your campaigns. It's going to be the strategic direction of your campaigns over time. And one thing I always like to mention here is just a good ad is a good ad. So you can split test the hell out of a bad ad. And what does it matter if you increase a 0.1% conversion rate to 0.2? Who cares if a good ad can get you a 2% conversion rate? And then if I optimize that good ad, then I can get up to a 2.7% conversion rate, right? But that is 100 times better than the crappy ad in the first place. So we always want to think strategy and content first. How do we create good advertising that really resonates with our audience and encourages them to take action over time versus just running bad content and bad advertising and then optimizing it. It doesn't quite work that way. Strategy needs to lead. Psychology on these platforms. Again, real quick review. We can't retarget for the most part on these platforms. It's just HIPAA compliance and concerns. The platforms generally won't let you retarget even if you tried to. So no real retargeting. We have to focus more general. We can target by location. On Facebook, it can be as small as a mile radius. We can literally say, hey, there's a conference for people that are likely to want our services, and we just want to target around that conference. You can do that on Facebook. Some platforms are only 5 miles out, 10 miles out, depends on the platform, but you can get pretty focused with your location targeting. Audience demographics, gender, age, etc. Interests. So can we target people that are interested in our product services? Absolutely. So again, you often don't have to do that these days. All of these platforms will recognize what people's interests are based on their click behavior, based on their dwell time, based on the conversations that they're having, the websites they're visiting. When you're logged into Facebook, it's tracking every single website that you visit at the same time, right? So it gets a lot of data. They know what you're interested in, what you're not. So we can do a lot of interest-based targeting on these platforms. Or we can just let the algorithm figure out the interest target on our end. We'll always get asked questions like, can we target insurance? No, you cannot target someone that has a Blue Cross Blue Shield policy or a UMR policy or whatever the case may be. There is no data there. It's obviously HIPAA concerns with that kind of data, and there is no accuracy when it comes to identifying a policy holder with back-end audience campaigns. We've had lots of people ask us. We've tried a variety of solutions over the years, often at high cost to the client. Nothing has ever actually turned out to be able to, in a HIPAA compliant manner, track insurance to patient data from a targeting standpoint on these platforms. Same thing with income level. You can do some income-based targeting. You can pull in some third-party data for income-based targeting. Most of it's not overly accurate, so we have not found a high value in doing income-based targeting just because of the inaccuracies in the data. Better is often location-based targeting that assumes certain income levels of zip codes. It's not perfect. These platforms aren't great at that kind of thing, but it usually does provide some kind of incremental increase if you do the targeting right. We want to think about the mindset on these platforms. Why is someone going to Facebook? They're going to check out things with family and friends, maybe look at a little bit of news or funny groups that they're part of. They're not looking to purchase services today. So we want to engage with people in the mindset that they're in. On LinkedIn, it's more professional. I am expecting professional content. I am expecting professional services, and so maybe learn something there. So I should be matching our ad and advertising content to the mindset of the people on the platform. It's going to get us a better result. The norms also work. LinkedIn I expect it to be very polished. And so I want to see really polished campaigns on LinkedIn. On Facebook or TikTok, I can be a little bit less polished, and maybe I should be. So we have a lot of data that shows us if we naturalize our content, or if we're using images, if we use some non-stock images or some non-professional photos, but maybe just photos that someone shot with their iPhone around the facility, that can be just as effective or even more effective on a platform where that content matches. You think of your average TikTok video, it's not a $10,000 30-second production. It's literally someone that just took their phone, answered a question, or did a little dance, right? And that's it. That's what people expect to see. And so if you match their expectations, they're a little bit more likely to engage with the content. If they're more likely to engage, they're more likely to remember, they're more likely to take action. So always think about that. But there's a balance between matching the platform and the reputation, the image you want to portray of yourself. But you should be thinking about that. Also, related to messaging here, we talk about attracting and repelling. So we want the right message to attract the right people, right? We don't want cat videos because that's going to attract the wrong person. But it also should repel the wrong people away. So let's say that I am providing services to people with a higher income level. I want something more polished. I want to show off some of our white glove services or luxury services because that's unconsciously or even consciously sending a message that, hey, this is not for someone that's looking for free or cheap services. So how does our content actually repel the wrong people as well as attract the right people? Now, a comment here, we do a lot of advertising where there are significant health needs, both mental and physical health. And a lot of advertisers or organizations think that they should be marketing like the happy result. That's usually not the mindset that your patient or patient referral partner, like their family, is in. They're usually in a kind of a dark place. They're in a lot of pain if they have a big pain that needs to be solved. And so to get their attention, you actually have to match their pain to show that you understand what they're going through and what they need. And so you should start with, we often say start with the hell, then show them the heaven. Really good content a lot of the time in the healthcare space is not overly optimistic or aspirational in the initial message. The initial part of the message is matching the pain of the potential patient or family member. And then it shows them, through the content, whether it's written content or if you're kicking them to a landing page with a video, whatever the situation is, you absolutely do want to show them what you're able to provide them at the end. And that should be aspirational and happy. But your initial content, often a good chance where it should be a little bit darker or focus on the pain. Pharmaceutical advertisements do a good job with this. So if you look at good pharmaceutical advertisements, not all of them do it, but good pharmaceutical advertisements on TV and Facebook will often show the people with the pain, they're unhappy, either they're in a bad mental health space or they've got, eczema on their skin or they've got knee pain. And then it shows them, as it talks about the medication, shows them start to do the thing that they're trying to do or become happier, or the chain breaks off their arm and, the eczema heals itself or whatever the situation is. So look at pharma ads, they're a great example. Pharma spends billions on marketing every year. And so they have a lot of data that shows what they're doing works. And so they're usually a good example to think about. Last comment I would make there too on Big Pharma. You notice that Big Pharma spends a lot of money on paid social campaigns and especially even TV campaigns. 30% of all nightly news advertisements are advertisements from pharmaceutical companies for some kind of medication. Why is Big Pharma spending billions of dollars on television and Facebook and X and TikTok? Because it works. Now, does anyone call up and buy a new prescription? No, absolutely not. You can't do that. It's illegal, right? They have to go through a PCP or a healthcare provider for them to be able to get a prescription. But what Big Pharma has seen again and again and again is that as you advertise on these channels, then that drives the patient and the consumer to go to their PCP and say, hey, I just saw XYZ drug on Facebook. Can you tell me more about it? And that encourages the PCP to prescribe it because they want to make the patient happy. They want to find solutions for their patients just as much as anyone. And if their patient thinks that something's going to work for them, as long as it meets the medical need and criteria that they expect in terms of good patient care, they're usually going to go forward with that request. And Big Pharma knows that. They see it all the time in the success of their advertising campaigns. So they invest more and more. There's a reason they're paying for 30% of nightly news on TV. There's a reason that they're paying billions of dollars on Facebook and X and TikTok. They know how to think long term. They're not looking for that patient to pick up the phone and call. They're not looking for the patient to see the billboard advertisement, turn around, grab the family, and go to their doctor. They're thinking, hey, how do we see qualified lift? How do we see prescription volume lift over the next 3, 6, and 12 months? And so when you think about it right, when you know the timeline of the metrics you should be looking at, that's when you are going to be successful with these kinds of campaigns. This brings us to our standard FAQ section at the end. What should we be looking at in terms of what works and what doesn't work, or common questions that providers are going to have, or executives in particular have? So number one, I've hopefully answered that throughout this particular training. Why aren't our ads converting to new patients? Most of the time it's because you're looking at them wrong. You're probably trying to look for an ROI in week 1 or month 1. You're looking for a click and a call. You're saying, hey, when we look at our call data, how many people call from Facebook, or how many people call from X, or how many new referrals did we get from LinkedIn? And again, it's absolutely the wrong way to evaluate these platforms. Nobody has seen a LinkedIn ad and then immediately calling you and handing off a referral. No patient is on X and saying, oh yeah, I totally need new dental implants today. I totally need bariatric surgery today. Let me call and schedule that service. Like, that's not how these platforms work. So you need to be evaluating qualified lift over time in the aggregate. There has to be an ROI. You're absolutely right that you're searching for an ROI here, but you're looking in 3 to 6 month windows at least. And generally would really recommend looking at that kind of increase over time. So 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. What are we seeing in terms of incremental gains in total qualified inquiry lift that then obviously should be translating to new patients and new admissions? Why is our click-through rate, or CTR, only 1%? That's a question that I get asked a lot when we report on outcomes data for some of these platforms. So again, that's a traffic campaign. That's an objective where the algorithm is actually trying to find people that click on ads a lot of the time. If we're running an awareness campaign, we'll see regular click-through rates of 0.1%. Our goal is not to focus on the small minority of people that are clicking on ads. That's a bonus. That's a value. We want those people. But we are also running marketing campaigns to make sure that the 99 or 99.9% of people that don't click on the ad are also getting value out of it. We're also staying top of mind. We're helping them along in a decision-making process. So you need to think about your ad campaign strategically in terms of all the people that don't click, as well as the people that are clicking. How much money should we spend here? Always a really good question, and something that hopefully started to make sense when we talked about the numbers. Remember, total audience size that we're trying to reach, divide by 1,000, multiply by our target frequency, which is often like 3 to 4 per week, and then multiply that by our CPM cost, which will give us our budget. If we can't max out our budget at the level that we would want to reach the entire target audience, we should be shrinking the audience, narrowing it down to make it more manageable for us. And our spend should always be comfortable, something that we can handle, because again, these campaigns are going to be taking 3, 6 months to start seeing results. We are looking for a long-term lift and cumulative build by building community mindshare, both among referral partners as well as the consumers or the residents of the community themselves. And so we need to be comfortable with that spend. We should just be watching and looking at a number that is not going to have us biting our nails, worrying about the ROI and the spend right away. We should have enough cash flow in place where this is just a fixed spend. And then we want to think about expanding to other channels. Again, start with the channel where you know most of your patients are likely to be, or where they're more likely to take action. And then as we max out that channel, we'll expand to the next best one. So I might start with Facebook, and then I will expand to TikTok. Or if my crowd is younger, I might start with TikTok, and then after a while expand to Facebook, whatever this case may be. We need more patients. Can we spend more? Always a good question. Yes and no, right? So just like SEO or just like business development, we can't hire a new business development rep and then expect them day one to start bringing in new referrals. They have to build awareness. They have to build relationships. They have to build trust. They have to get better at their jobs, whatever the case may be. Your marketing is the same, especially on paid social. You're not going to just turn on a spend and start to see results. You're going to be thinking, I need 3 to 6 months here to make sure that this works. And if we're seeing qualified inquiry lift that then translates into new patient volume, then yes, you should absolutely be spending more. But you should make sure that, again, that's an incremental growth over time, and make sure that your channels are working, that you are seeing qualified inquiry lift before you invest more money. And then finally, make sure it's a long play. Your PPC spend, you can invest more in 14-day windows, 30-day windows, and you'll start to see a quick return, assuming that you haven't capped out on your search volume for the high intent terms. With paid social, you're not going to have that. You're going to have a much slower build. And so you should be planning 3 months out. If we need more patients in 3 months, we should be adding to this spend. If I need more patients tomorrow, well, you're probably doing something wrong, because you should never be in a situation where you are having cash flow concerns about tomorrow, because there's nothing you can do, right? There's no magic button that you can press today that's suddenly going to get you a ton of new patients tomorrow. You always want to be running the organization in a way where we're thinking 3 to 6 months down the line. What investments are we making now based on what we've seen working that's going to make us successful in the future, that's farther out than tomorrow, next week, or even next month most of the time. If you're running lead forms, a question you often get is, why are we getting so many spam fills on the forms? So just like PPC and clicks, there's spam out there. There's bots trolling the internet all over the place. There's people that were just wanting to see what was going on. They put in a fake name, they put in a fake email address, or they clicked and then backed out, or they pocket filled it out. That happens sometimes. Lots of different reasons that you're going to get spam form fills. It is just part of the marketing mix. So again, you can create hoops where they have to fill out more of the lead form, and that's going to reduce the number of spam fills and reduce the number of bots. But you're also going to, like we've talked about, lose a certain percentage of qualified inquiries because they don't want to deal with the hassle. So usually the best way to deal with these is just to sort out the spam, get rid of it, and let it come in, and focus on the qualified inquiries, and not worry about trying to zero out your spam, because you're always going to have some, and that's okay. Why aren't our ads telling people to call now? So this is a great question that I get a lot of the time. If you're running call now ads on Facebook, it's an option. You can do that. You're using the platform wrong. Again, are people going onto Facebook because they have a tooth pain and they need a dental emergency right now? Absolutely not. Are they going onto Facebook because they need to visit the ER because they're puking up blood? No, that's not why they're going on Facebook. So a call now campaign is not the right campaign to be running on Facebook. You need to be thinking awareness. You need to be thinking nurturing and consideration. How do we educate? How do we inform? How do we build trust on these platforms so that when they do need or want our services, we come to mind and they call us? But we're not trying to get them to stop what they're doing, stop looking at their nice pictures of their grandchildren and call, because what they want to do right now is they want to look at the pictures of their grandchildren. Can we screen out Medicaid callers or target specific insurances? We've covered that in this training and multiple trainings. No. You can do a little bit of income targeting. You can do a little bit of location-based income targeting with zip code as a proxy. You're never going to be able to get rid of people that you potentially don't want calling all the time. You're always going to have a certain percentage of people that call for reasons that we've talked about. You have more people with healthcare needs on Medicaid. Medicaid callers are going to call more providers because they can't find somewhere to go. So one person will call 10 people, whereas someone on commercial insurance is just going to call 2 or 3 people until they find somewhere to go. So you just have higher volumes. And again, there's no data on the back end that you can use to target insurances. There's no third-party data that you can buy to target insurances, even though some people will tell you that there isn't. So no. What's a good target cost per qualified inquiry? So this is a bad question. Unless you're running lead forms, which we don't advise because so many people will not get the opportunity to see the content you want them to see, we're not getting direct inquiries off of these channels. So what we're going to do in terms of calculating this real ROI is we're going to look at our total lift. So let's say that, again, we're getting 100 patients new patients a month in on a regular basis. We start running Facebook and X campaigns, and now we're getting 115 patients a month. Well, we're going to take our total ad spend on those two channels, divide it by the new 15 patients a month that we're bringing in, and that's our ROI, right? So it is calculable, but it's from this aggregate standpoint. We're not seeing it in call tracking. There's no way for us to tie it directly back to the platform. We are just looking at aggregate lift, making an assumption that these campaigns are a big part of why we're seeing that lift, and running the calculation that way. How many staff do I need to run paid social? So question that we come up with on all of these. Again, best answer is you need multiple staff. You need a content copywriter. You need an analytics specialist who knows optimization and the data and how to navigate these platforms and what works on them. You need a graphic designer to create the graphics. You need a web developer to create the landing pages that they're going to. And often you also need like a higher end content writer. So someone that writes ads is usually different from someone that's writing like long form content, whether that's a white paper or just a blog post or even a service page on your website. Writing 1,500 words of content is pretty different from writing 50 words in an ad. And ad content writing is very, very different in terms of the hooks that you're building in there, the way you're building trust, the way you're building urgency or interest versus a long form blog post, which is going to be a lot more educational or informative, while also having some of those components. So 4 or 5 different people working a paid social account is ideal best practice in my world as someone that runs an agency where I've got multiple departments and multiple people in those departments to put on to any given account. Now, if you're a small provider and you're trying to do this all yourself, you can try to hire a jack of all trades. You're usually still not going to get enough out of them. Even if you got someone that can create really bad graphics, but understands how Facebook and X works and can maybe cobble some copy together, you don't need that person working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And so you're going to overpay significantly from a return on investment standpoint by trying to have an FTE, a full-time employee, in a place where you could just hire an agency for like a fifth the cost and get 4 or 5 people specialized to do the different roles. Versus one person. Now, as a larger organization, again, can you start to look at it? Does it make sense if you're, $200 million a year organization? Should you be hiring an entire team that I just talked about to run your paid social ads? That's up to you. Does it make sense? Or do you guys understand marketing enough? Do you want to build out the training processes? Do you want to build out the recruitment processes? Do you understand the KPIs and how to hold the team accountable? Do you want to pay for a manager to be holding the team accountable? Like, do these costs and this build out make sense considering that you're a healthcare provider and your expertise is healthcare, not marketing? For most providers, the answer is no. For most providers, they're going to outsource. Even if they could afford to bring it in-house, they don't want the expense. They don't want the hassle of managing that team, especially if they don't know how to train, hold accountable, recruit appropriately, etc. When should I expect results? We've covered this a couple times. 3 to 6 months is a solid window to really start evaluating any of your paid social channels. And again, if you're not seeing a lift there, then it's not a problem with the channel, it's a problem with you. You're potentially not spending enough. Are you only spending $1,000 a month? Well, if you're a large provider and you're only spending $1,000 a month, that's not going to move the needle for you. Are your campaigns good? Are you running the right messaging to the right audience at the right time? If you're not getting the results you should be looking at all of those different pieces to troubleshoot what's working or what's not working. And again, as always, remember, we're looking at qualified inquiry lift. That's going to be different from total new patients or admissions. We're looking at the admissions team, the call team for those conversion rates. Marketing, we're just looking at the qualified inquiry. The other teams need to be converting that volume. And then there's all those other pieces, right? How long are the patients staying? What is your team doing to make sure that you retain them or get them to come back and reutilize services? Do you have availability in the schedule? Maybe marketing sending a whole bunch of qualified inquiries and your admission team or your call team is really good, but you're booked up for 3 months, which would be great. But you're not going to convert those calls, right? They're going to look for somewhere where they can get in quicker. So lots of different factors to put into place, but you should be thinking minimum 3 to 6 months for any kind of paid social investment. That's it for our training on paid social. Hope you enjoyed that one, and we'll see you on the next one.